It is the final day of campaigning in British Columbia. Voters go to the polls tomorrow for a provincial election, and a record number of voters have already cast their ballots. More than 1 million people voted in advance this year. That's more than 28% of all registered voters in BC. Opinion polls suggest a close race between the provincial NDP and the BC Conservatives. Housing, affordability, and the overdose crisis are big issues for voters and could make a big difference tomorrow. 3 young voters join me now to discuss. Jack Gordon is the president of the University of Victoria Conservatives. What have you been hearing from students on your campus about the candidates ahead of this election?
First off, Travis, thank you for having me. And yeah, I second what the 2 other speakers said in that cost of living, housing, and these various other issues discussed are on the forefront of students' mind. But I think what I hear a lot from students on campus is they're looking for hope. They're kind of looking for something different. And, unfortunately, we tragically had a drug-related death on campus last year. And I think that woke up a lot of students to how our government is handling the toxic drug crisis right now. And so amongst, yes, housing and the cost of living, students are frankly just looking for the best way forward and questioning whether or not we have that with our current government. And so I think that there's an opportunity here for students to really get engaged in the political process and understand what's going on in our province or could go on with the next election.
Jack, we've been looking at the national polls here, and the federal government right now is not doing so well in the polls. The Conservatives are. Talk to me a little bit about provincially. You're with the Young Conservatives, that Conservative movement in BC, and if it's also catching on.
Well, I'd like to touch on what I said originally in that I think hope is an incredibly important factor in what's going on right now. We've seen, I would say, unprecedented growth, specifically with the Conservative Party this year. And I see that anecdotally on my campus.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because John Rustad specifically, who I've had the pleasure to meet and speak with, along with various other Conservative candidates, are representing and transparently saying to students and young people alike that we need a new way forward, that we've tried certain systems, for the toxic drug crisis, for housing, and things where we're trying to make our streets safer, but we've experimented and they haven't worked. John Rustad has been able to assemble, in my opinion, what is a great group of people who really want to try something new for the best in BC, and they believe in a prosperous future vision for British Columbia, which I 100% subscribe to, and many people on my campus do as well.
Despite, the outreach to young people, they always don't show up. In BC's last provincial election, there was actually a decline in the number of young people that voted. Do you think this group this time around is going to show up, or do you think there will be some apathy? What is your message to young people like yourself that may be watching this right now in terms of why they need to get to the polls? Jack?
I think the most important message young people need to hear, and that I tell to people daily on campus, is that we've tried the system and this government for 7.5 to 8 years. Look around. Do you think you're better off now than you were a few years ago? I think it's worth a shot to try a new group of people who have a vision to make BC the best it can be, to invest in housing, to fix crime, and to tackle the toxic drug crisis, so that, again, like John Rustad has said previously, with 1 in 2 young people considering leaving the province, he wants to build a future for you. I encourage young people. I think you should consider that.
Okay.